My name is Brutus Buckeye. The famous YouTuber who made videos like Hook on Missing Part 1 featuring Bill and 1 minute and 1 second of black screen. Today I will be reading Chapter 2 of I Survived the Sinking of the Titanic 1912 by Lauren Tarshiz. Chapter 2, 19 hours earlier, Sunday, April 14th, 1912, 7:15 a.m., first class suite. B-deck, RMS Titanic. George woke up early that morning, half expecting to hear Papa calling him for chores. But then he remembered the Titanic. He was on the greatest ship in the world. It was their 5th day at sea. George and his 8-year-old sister Phoebe had spent 2 months in England with their Aunt Daisy. What a time they had! As a surprise for George's 10th birthday, Aunt Daisy took them to see the Tower of London, where they used to chop off your head if the king didn't like you. Now they were heading back to America, back to Papa and their little farm in upstate New York. George got out of bed and knelt by the small, round window that looked out on the ocean. "Morning," said Phoebe, peering through the silk curtains of her bed and fumbling for her spectacles. Her curly brown hair was practically standing straight up. "What are you looking for?" George had to smile. Phoebe always had a question, even at the crack of dawn. Maybe that's why she was the smartest little sister in the world. "I thought I was a giant squid," George said, "and it's coming to get us." George rushed and grabbed Phoebe with wiggly squid arms. She curled up into a ball and laughed. She was still laughing when Aunt Daisy came in, even in her robe and slippers. Aunt Daisy was the prettiest lady on the whole ship. Sometimes George couldn't believe she was so old. 22. "What's this?" What's this?" Aunt Daisy said. "You know the rule. No having fun without me." Phoebe sat up and put her arms around George. George said he saw a giant squid. Aunt Daisy laughed. "I wouldn't doubt it. Everyone wants to get a look at the Titanic, even sea monsters." George halfway believed it. He never imagined anything like the Titanic. Aunt Daisy called the ship a floating palace, but it was way better than the cold and dusty castles they'd seen in England. They had 3 whole rooms, one for Phoebe and George, one for Aunt Daisy, and one for sitting around and doing nothing. They even had a man, a steward named Henry. He had bright red hair and an Irish accent that made everything he said sound like a jolly song. "Some fresh towels for your bath," he would say. "Some cocoa before bed." And just before they turned out the lights for the night, Henry would knock on their door and peek his head in. "Is there anything else you might need?" he'd ask. George kept trying to think of something he needed. But what could you ever need on the Titanic? The ship had everything, even a swimming pool with ocean water heated like a bath, even gold silk curtains for your bed so you could pretend you were sleeping in a pirate's den, even 3 dining rooms where you could eat anything you wanted. Last night, George had eaten 2 plates of roast beef, veal, and ham pie, carrots sweet as candy, and a mysterious dessert called meringue pudding. It tastes like sugary clouds. Actually, there was one thing missing from the Titanic: the New York Giants baseball team. George wondered what Henry would say. If George said, "I need shortstop Artie Fletcher right away," probably Henry would say, "Coming right up, sir." George grinned just thinking about it. But Aunt Daisy wasn't smiling at him. She looked very serious. We have to make the most of our last 3 days at sea, Aunt Daisy said in a low voice. I want you to promise me, George, no more trouble. George gulped. Was she really still mad at him for last night? We'd slid down the banister, the grand staircase in the first-class lobby. How could he resist? The wood was so shiny and polished, curving around like a ride at the fair. That lady could have moved out of the way, George said. How could she, Phoebe said. She was wearing 100 pounds of diamonds. Aunt Daisy almost smiled. George could tell. No, she could never stay mad at George for long. Aunt Daisy put her face very close to George's. She had freckles on her nose, just like George and Phoebe. No more trouble, she repeated, tapping his chest. I don't want to have to send a telegram to your father. George's stomach tightened into a baseball. Don't tell Papa, Phoebe said. You'll send George away to the army school. I'll be good, George promised. I will, really. You better be, Aunt Daisy said. And that is the end of chapter 2 of I Survived the Sinking of the Titanic, 1912, by Lauren Tarshiz, published in 2010. Thank you for watching. I got abused in Turkey.